Welcome to the second phase of trauma-informed training designed to support staff in an early years setting. We will now give you all 5 minutes to fetch an item from your house or classroom to share on screen. It must represent what inspires you about your work. Can you hold up your item one by one? At the end of the 5 minutes, introduce yourself, your role, and explain your object. The main objective of today's training is to increase a confidence in responding to an individual's ACE needs. How do we do this? We develop our skills using emotion coaching when communicating in an early years setting. We must remember to prioritise our own well-being as early years staff. You cannot pour from an empty cup. We look at how we can begin to build resilience in young children, even at an early stage of development, who might be facing adversity. The main definition of ACEs is reinforced as stressful experiences that occur during childhood. Professor Bellis from Public Health Wales created a Welsh study in 2016 which gathered data on the prevalence and impact of ACEs in the general population of Wales. This table shows the 9 ACEs that the study explored for the number of adults affected by child maltreatment or environmental issues across a sample of the Welsh population. We would like you in small groups to discuss and share what you learned from Phase 1 ACE awareness training that you didn't already know, or anything in the data that surprised you. Has it changed your opinions and attitudes or practice in your roles since? We are going to explore how a whole school approach to using emotion coaching as a communication skill can be helpful in allowing people to feel supported and comforted when in times of distress. I want you to read the photocopier scenario and discuss how you would respond to this person and feedback. I want you to know that the person does not usually present in this manner. They are usually quite calm and collected on many occasions in the school environment. Most people try to instantly solve the issue. They will offer to share their lunch, do the yard duty. But really, there needs to be an acceptance of his feelings as a first and a chance to listen while he offloads. Not all issues need to be fixed, and there are not always solutions to every problem. The definition of emotion coaching is provided by Gottman and colleagues from 1996. They say we naturally fall into one of 4 styles or responses when faced with people in distress. The style that we are going to aim for is the emotion coaching style. We use the acronym ACE to help us remember: acceptance of the feeling or emotion and labelling, the curiosity behind what's driving the emotion. We use the acronym WIN, W-I-N, I wonder, I imagine, I notice, as your sentence starters for curiosity conversations, followed by empathy when the person has shared. Emotion dismissing, we often use this dismissing style by playing down the person's upset, then trumping them with all your own more important issues. Emotion suppressing, this style of emotion suppressing is usually where people are uncomfortable when people show any other emotion besides happiness. They make out you are overreacting. And a laissez-faire style is a total disregard for the distress shown and being totally uninterested in the person. We call this the Vicky Pollard response, whatever. If we now start to look at the process, it usually starts with a trigger situation. There could have been a fight on the yard, some name calling, losing control. We must start with the heart before we try to solve any of the questioning or problems. We want to avoid the how, what, why, when, or where approach to begin with. We must remember to label first how the person looks really upset or angry or furious or frightened. Allow time for the cortisol to deplete from the system as they have released the stress hormone inside their body. And they're usually in the fight, flight, or freeze area of the brain. Then when you feel there has been time out period for opportunity to calm down, you can then separate the emotion from the action. Example, you can explain, I totally understand how you felt when somebody called you names and wound you up, but it is just not acceptable to lash out and punch them or assault them. Explore the feelings once calmer in the day. What feelings did you experience in your body before you lost control? Give examples: clenched fist, heart beating, sweating. This is the beginning of them looking out for the signs that show they're about to lose control, release the cortisol, and possibly lose their temper and lose all moral reasoning. It is different for each person, and different people have different responses to the release of cortisol. The problem-solving box is important. We need to think about, if this happens again and we feel our body's changing, what options have we got instead? Try to offer 3 more suitable options. Then the young person agrees to try one of them the next time this situation occurs. Do you think that this will work on the first occasion? Actually, probably not, as the behaviour is usually ingrained and pathways have been strengthened over and over again to respond to threat in a certain way. They will not be altered until at least 5 to 6 times of practicing the alternative skill and reaction to the situation. When they react with the same behaviour again after agreeing for the solution previously offered, we don't give up. We offer a different solution from the choices. We keep trying to improve the behaviour. Behaviour does not alter overnight. It takes a long time. And as an ex-smoker might still reach for a cigarette each morning, even though they've given up for many years, the brain has strengthened certain habitual behaviours. And this is how we have to respond and restore a different solution. If you read the typical scenario involving the little girl Millie, I'm going to ask you to try to match the responses in the next 2 slides to the 4 ways in which we view and express our own emotions. Emotion coaching, remember, is the awareness of the emotion, the curiosity behind what's driving it, and the empathy which follows. Remember the acronym ACE for ACEs. This is the style that we're aiming to adopt for our early years settings, both with children and adults. Some of the responses which follow, however, can be emotion dismissing, emotion suppressing, and laissez-faire, which we often adopt without realising it. Here are some examples of each style in responding to the case of Millie. Remember that we are aiming for an emotion coaching style. An example would be, "Wow, you sound so upset today, Millie. I imagine you want to go into the house area instead. Are you upset because your friend is not in the group today?" Or we might use emotion dismissing. "Stop being so silly, Millie. You will love this activity." Emotion suppressing example. "You can't be overreacted like this, Millie, and wanting your own way. Put your happy face on right now." And laissez-faire. "Cut this out right now." Try to match the responses to the 4 styles that we've discussed: emotion coaching, emotion dismissing, emotion suppressing, or laissez-faire. Statement 1. Pick up the crayons and sit nicely. Number 2. You love colouring. Don't be so silly. Number 3. You're looking a bit sad today. Let's go over in that book corner and have a little chat, Millie. Number 4. How dare you throw the crayons on the floor? We have taken such a long time to set this activity up, Millie. Number 5. I do want to talk to you about why you're so upset, but we do need to get this activity done. But come and sit close by with me at the table. Don't shout like that, Millie, please. Number 7. I'm wondering whether you're feeling a bit upset about not being able to play with the cars. After I finish clearing away, we can have a little chat about this then. Number 8. Can you fetch me the paper from the other table? Number 9. I have no time to deal with your tantrums today, Millie. Number 10. Don't worry, sweetie. You may want to do this activity a bit later. Number 11. Oh, you poor thing, you look so sad today. What would help you feel a bit better about completing this? Number 12. Go talk to Mrs. Thomas right now. Dan Hughes uses place to remind us how to put aces in their places. He adds playfulness and liking to the ACE of acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. He says how important it is to have unconditional positive regard, which gets the best out of people. Dan Hughes talks about playfulness. He says sometimes that can work. It can be about showing warmth, soft eye contact, welcoming body posture, sit in a chair alongside the child instead of standing over them can help. He says how important it is to have positive regard for the child, unconditional positive regard, even though the behaviour has been extremely challenging. Remember, we are looking behind what drives the behaviour, which emotion has been driving that. We need acceptance. We need to give the child a label. You look really upset right now. Would you like to tell me what's happened? That curiosity. I'm wondering if you're upset about what Gethin said, and followed after their response with empathy. When you know a child really well and you know their home environment and conditions, it is helpful to get them in a positive relationship with yourself. For example, I know you're finding mum being away difficult at the moment, and that's totally okay and understandable. We will now begin to practice our skills of emotion coaching with a role play activity. In threes, please take on one role as the staff member, the little girl Millie, and an observer. Follow the start of the conversation by using the script on the slide and continue to use the skills of emotion coaching. The observer will be making notes on the place checklist to look for playfulness, the liking and unconditional positive regard for the child, the acceptance of the emotion, the curiosity behind what's driving it, and the empathy. Please allow time to feedback from each of the roles played and discuss the feelings and thoughts. When a young child has dysregulated and lost control, they cannot access the thinking part of the brain, so using place will not be appropriate until they have returned to their window of tolerance and given suitable time for the cortisol levels to deplete from the system. If we start to think of something called the window of tolerance, which shows on the graph below by Dan Siegel, it gives us signs to look out for depending on the child's young person's behaviour. We must aim to only use the emotion coaching process to problem solve when the young person is in the middle of the graph and has come back into something that we call their window of tolerance. The brain is shut off when children or young people or adults are in the fight or flight upper levels of the graph. If they're in that response, they cannot problem solve or think straight, so you're wasting your time having discussions. Often after a child has reached the upper limits of the graph and have been into a fight or flight response, they will often drop down into the bottom level of the graph, which is called a hypoarousal state. This is often where the child looks to be in depression, despair, disassociation. They will often put their heads on the desk. They will often try to hide in a corner of a room. They don't want to actually respond to anybody. They don't want to have a conversation. They are not ready. At this point, it is useful for people to let the cortisol levels deplete so that they are able to come slowly back into the middle section of the graph, back into the window of tolerance, where they will be more open to having those conversations to actually get to the root of the problems. It's useful for us to look for signs of where children and young people are presenting in the three different zones. Remember, we're aiming to use our place when children are in the middle window of tolerance, which is the optimal arousal zone. When they are in the window of tolerance, children are able to feel and think simultaneously. They're able to experience empathy, feel safe. They're in the moment and present. They're open and curious. They're able to tolerate their feelings. They're open to a relationship and engagement with the adult that is conversing with them. But often children will flip into the hyperarousal zone, which means they are then entered into the fight-flight response, and they're then in the part of the brain that is the survival part. At this point, you can see the signs. They have tension in their bodies, they are shaking, they have racing thoughts, hypervigilance, they feel unsafe, they have emotionals, overwhelmed feelings, they have anger, rage, impulsivity, and are extremely defensive. Often when children have gone into the hyperarousal zone, they will drop down into the bottom zone, which we often call an immobilization response. This can often appear to be a child with no energy. They're flat. They have a numbing of emotions. They are not there. They are passive. They have reduced physical movement. They seem to be ashamed. They're disconnected. They can't think. They can't say no. And they can't defend oneself. They will often put their heads on the desk, refuse to engage in a conversation with you, even face the wall, or even want to escape. Now we bring our attention to a typical scenario of a child who is presented in a heightened state of arousal. They're in a current state of fight. Think about how we can bring this child back to their window of tolerance. What must we ensure as a priority? Safety first is paramount for the children, the young person, and other staff members. If a young person dysregulates on more than one occasion and reacts in an unsafe way, there must be a positive handling plan in place on how we will keep them and others safe in the future. Look at all the scenarios and agree with pupil, parent and staff of the procedures that you will put in place to safeguard everybody if this happens again. When the young person has dysregulated or lost control, you must have de-escalation tasks to calm the body down and decrease the cortisol. Simple matching activities, repetitive tasks, help the young person to get back into their window of tolerance. Remember, we have to connect with our relationships before you can use the emotion coaching process to correct the behaviours. We are now going to look at how we prioritise our own well-being as staff members in school environments. This second session is going to help us to look at how we all often slip outside our window of tolerance on certain days. I want you to discuss what helps you bring yourself back to your window of tolerance if you've had an extremely stressful day in the classroom. Some examples that people have given in the past to this: they like to go for a run. They have to walk the dog in the fresh air in the local park after returning from school. Some people will say they would like to clean, to sort the house out, get everything in its place. Some people mention having a hot bath, exercise, the gym, some gardening, listening to music, etc. Jenny Mosley recognises that teaching is one of the most stressful occupations, and she recommends it is up to all of us to take responsibility for ensuring our own mental health and well-being is protected. We will often see on aeroplanes the message to please put your own oxygen mask on before you help others. And I think this is something we do need to remember. She uses the acronym SPICE, and she says that we need a balance of all 5 elements in our lives to function as a human being. We often run our well dry as the term goes on, and as our levels of cortisol rise, the more stress we take on in the day job, we are more likely to have a compromised immune system and spend the first few weeks of our holidays ill. We must ensure a steady work-life balance to function as an available and trusted adult for the young people in our care. Nobody will thank you for running yourself on empty and ending up off school due to stress or sickness. We also tend to neglect our close family and friends in the process of caring for everybody else's children in the classroom settings. We are all irreplaceable, remember. The people that will miss you the most if you pass away are your close family and friends, and your job will be re-advertised. In the space of a few weeks, you have to keep everything in perspective. Spiritual can be renewing your sense of wonder and awe. It doesn't have to be religious in the context of visiting a church. It can be walking in the local park, listening to the birds singing in the trees and the animals. It can be physical. She recommends exercise, relaxation and sleep to keep us fit and well. She says that we don't stop learning when we leave school. We need to continue to extend ourselves intellectually, to read, debate and plan things that are of interest to us. She also recommends a creative well needs to be filled regularly. She encourages us to enjoy our senses, imagination, think about the arts. You can also, if you're not a particularly creative person, it can be listening to music, going to concerts, going to the theatre. And the emotional well is where we must prioritise unconditional time with close family, our relationships, express our feelings and have fun. She says we cannot just remember to do all these things in the half-term holiday or the summer holidays or on weekends or we are losing the ability to really live our lives. She says variety is the spice of life for energy and perspective. We will now begin to explore what is resilience and how do we build it. This slide shows us it is no ordinary magic. There are 5 main elements to building resilience. We need basics: belonging, coping, learning, and core self. The basics are around: we need a roof over our heads, we need food on the table, suitable clothing, a bit like a car needs petrol in order to run. We all have a need to belong, to feel part of something, to fit in. Alongside that, we need coping, remedies and skills and strategies so that when times get tough, we can pull these out of the bag. Learning, which includes our school education, is a way of fostering people's skills, talents and interests. And it is here in school usually where the core self is developed. The spells here work deeply to help shape a child's character, their points of view, their morals, and teaching them right from wrong. I now want us to think about those 5 areas that make up the resilience framework: the basics: belonging, learning, coping, and core self. I'd like you to think about, what does your school already do to help develop resilience in these 5 key areas? Is there anything else that could be done at a universal whole school level? I want to take your attention to the lotus flower picture in the right-hand corner. The lotus flower comes from the murkiest waters, but grows into the purest thing. Sadly, we know many of our children face adversity in their childhood. Some of them do come from the very murkiest waters, and we do know that with time and energy, they can blossom into the most beautiful flower. We have unpicked the resilience skills needed, and we've split them into 9 main cards. Schools can look at using 3 cards per term, or they can look at 9 over a 2-year rolling programme. And they can investigate how the 6 areas of learning in the new Successful Futures curriculum can produce creative activities and tasks that will enhance each of these resilience skills. For example, we have learn self-control, to take decisive actions, learn from experience. We need to keep things in perspective, accept that change is a part of life. We do have to have resilience skills to recognise your own feelings and those of others and cope with big feelings. We have to make connections, use and improve social skills, develop the ability to seek help from others. We have to be willing to overcome difficulties, not give up, and develop problem-solving skills. We have to maintain a hopeful outlook. We have to develop optimistic thinking patterns in our pupils. We have to take care of ourselves, look for opportunities for self-discovery, improve self-esteem and nurture a positive view of yourself. We have to move towards goals in life and have realistic expectations, but be allowed to dream too. Please now select 3 skill cards that you feel most confident helping children with. Share some of the activities that you use to promote the skill with your group in your particular subject area. What does an ACE-informed school look like to you? 1 post-it note per person. Write 1 word on what an ACE-informed school should look like. We're going to use these to devise a Wordle poster for the staff room. ACE Support Hub is here to help. We offer a variety of training packages which are freely available, and we are totally funded by Welsh Government. We would please ask you to get in touch or follow us on Twitter or Facebook, or email us directly on ace@wales.nhs.uk if you have any issues or queries. We'd like to thank you for listening to this presentation today.